the heart of Ross, Ohio, stands a cherished landmark, the Venice Pavilion Antiques Mall, which was once the bustling Venice Pavilion bar and dance hall. Known for its historic charm, the pavilion has been a community gathering place since it opened in 1918. Yet, before the pavilion stood here, an equally notable structure occupied the same ground. Ochs Hotel, a grand 25-room building, owned by Frank and Helena Ochs. The hotel, originally known as Ochs Tavern, had a history deeply woven into Venice's own past. Its transformation into a hotel occurred around the 1860s, after Frank and Helena were married. Frank Ochs, whose passions lay in farming, left most of the hotel management to his wife, Helena. Frank's obituary would later make no mention of the hotel, focusing solely on his farming successes. Helena, who had been married to another man, Charles Stephen, before his death in 1867, had all her children in the early to late 1850s. She would go on to marry Frank Ochs after Stephen's passing, and together they would operate the largest building in town, providing lodging, food, and a meeting place for locals. Over the years, the Ochs Hotel became a vibrant community space. Around 1909, its final year, the hotel housed apartments, small businesses, and communal spaces. On the first floor, Frank Beaver and his wife, Virgil, ran W.R. Thomas Groceries and Meats, named after Mrs. Beaver's son. This grocery store and ice cream parlor became a hub of activity within the hotel. Additionally, the hotel was home to the Brandt family, James Brandt, his wife, and their 5 children, and even provided residence to Mr. and Mrs. Ochs. In 1909, just a year after Frank Ochs passed away, Frank Beaver devised a scheme to burn down the Ochs Hotel and claim an insurance payout. Late one night, he set the hotel ablaze, expecting a substantial return. The fire spread rapidly, trapping the hotel's residents, including Helena, the Brandt family, and the Beavers themselves. In a brave attempt to retrieve her belongings, 81-year-old Helena Ochs re-entered the burning building, and had to be rescued a second time. As the flames intensified, Frank Beaver rushed across the street to seek help from the Meeker Hotel, which later became the Venice Castle Restaurant. It was noted in newspaper accounts that Beaver didn't call for help immediately, instead running to the hotel across the street. The fire's devastation nearly threatened the entire village, but the townspeople formed a bucket brigade, a pre-modern firefighting line where people passed water buckets from hand to hand. Thanks to their quick efforts, the blaze was contained to the Ochs Hotel. The damage, however, was total, and the building burned to the ground. Suspicion of arson led to the arrests of Frank and Virgil Beaver, and they were taken to Butler County Jail. After a brief trial, Frank Beaver was convicted of arson. 2 days later, overwhelmed by the shame and disgrace of his conviction, he borrowed a razor from a fellow inmate and took his own life, leaving a note for his wife. Following the destruction of the Ochs Hotel, the site remained vacant for nearly 9 years. During this time, a few small houses were built in the area that later became the Venice Pavilion's parking lot. In 1918, the Schraden family purchased the property, which they acquired from Mrs. Amanda de Morit, who would later pass away in 1931 and be buried next to her husband in Venice Cemetery. The Schradens moved the small homes to different parts of town, clearing the way for the construction of the Venice Pavilion. The pavilion brought a new era to the site, transforming it into a community landmark once more. Walter Schraden, along with his brother Stanley and their mother Molly, established the pavilion and ran it for many years. Today, this one photograph of the Ochs Hotel can be identified by the signage of W.R. Thomas Groceries and Meats, which serves as a unique detail in linking these images to the famous landmark that once occupied the site. These images, along with the stories of the hotel's tragic fire and the lives entwined with it, form an essential chapter of Venice's local history.